Every year on March 8th, International Women's Day is celebrated globally. On this day, the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women are recognized and celebrated. This day marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality and equity. International Women's Day has been occurring since 1911, well over a century, and people have been supporting the call for equity. Not just women, but groups, organizations from all walks of life. As we celebrate International Women's Day today, March 8th, I want to talk about the topic creating visibility for civil society organizations as we embrace equity for women. And I will be doing this by speaking to a number of persons who have various roles and who are involved in various organizations in Grenada. I want to introduce you to Ms. Shakey Cronwall, who will provide us with information about the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association. Ms. Cronwall will speak with us today about how we, the public, can play our part in helping raise awareness in the work of civil societies organizations, such as the Grenada Planned Parenthood, to create safe and inclusive and more equitable spaces for women to unlock their full potential in STEM as we celebrate Women's International Day under the theme DigiAll, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. Ms. Cronwall, welcome to the Social Mind. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your role you play, and about the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association.
Thank you so much, Lauderdale, for having us. As you said, I'm Shakey Cronwall, and I'm the Executive Director of the Grenada Planned Parenthood. And it's really an honor for us to be in this space, talking and recognizing, International Women's Day. It is so tied up in the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, and we're happy to share some of that in a wider space, with persons who are of like mind and persons who are also wondering and curious as to, what's that all about? How can we become involved and join the movement and support, gender equality? So at the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association, we work on a day-to-day basis offering sexual and reproductive health services. And that is a wide range of women's health services as well as men's health services. And so we have been traditionally known for birth control pills, contraceptives. So a lot of persons access those services, but we offer a wide range of service. And it might be good for us to kind of highlight some of that so that persons can access that, because at the end of the day, we have so many persons who are in need of sexual and reproductive health services. But first of all, perhaps you're not aware of it. And secondly, you may not know how to access it, right? And so when we talk about sexual and reproductive health services, we're talking about anything that has to do with reproduction. And so we're talking about the breast exams, we're talking about screening for cervical cancers, we're talking about digital rectal exam for men, as well as other rapid tests. And so we might have to help support the early detection and interventions for these types of cancers. So, both men and women can come out and access these services, as well as adolescents who are in need of those services.
Okay, so tell us how the Grenada Planned Parenthood helps empower women.
Right. So the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association believes that, women have a right to bodily autonomy and a right to choice. A person might think automatically that means, well, we kind of already know that, right? Traditionally, it has been an issue for women in terms of accessing comprehensive sexual reproductive health services, particularly because women's body has always been a part of the agenda in public spaces, in private spaces. And it's quite interesting, that in this era, we still have to be having a conversation about a woman's right to access to her body, right? So we're talking about, planning pregnancies, as a discussion and a conversation that the entire community has traditionally been involved in, a particular men in power and so on, making decisions around how many children you can have, when to have them, and so on. And so we really believe that we should be, ensuring that women understand fully that they can plan their pregnancies and that they have a role and it's their responsibility to, be front and center in those decisions. And while we welcome the opportunity for family planning to be a discussion amongst the family, we want to echo and solidify our principle in women's right to access to their body and control and autonomy of their bodies.
Absolutely. Now, tell us about some of the upcoming projects that the Grenada Planned Parenthood has.
Right. So on International Women's Day, we have this special little package for women, and they can come in from any part of the island and come into our administrative and clinical office at DuPonte Street in St. George's, and they can access any of our services at a discount just to honor and recognize international and to celebrate International Women's Day. Right, so you can check our Facebook page, and you'll see the ad out there, so you can come in, make your appointment, and come in. Right, we just concluded a very important project that had to do with general STI screening and the offering of a wide range of services. And we did that in a decentralized way. We went to different community centers throughout the month of January, and we concluded in February, right? We even went to Carriacou, and so we had a good time up there, offering women and men sexual reproductive health services. I also want to highlight that we know generally that when it comes to sexual reproductive health, the issues around teenage pregnancy, around young girls and young boys' access to the information as well as the commodities that they need to make safer choices around sex has always been a very big conversation. And we're happy that we have a youth advocacy movement, which is led and by young people. And it's really about advocating for, their empowerment, the ability for them to make choices, and for them to also have the resources. I mean, it's quite ironic that persons would say, that we want to reduce teenage pregnancies and so on, but we're not having the next conversation around what are we going to do about it. Absolutely. The logical conversation, right? So the youth advocacy movement, they're lobbying for, changes around their access and their right to access. We were doing some research the other day. We had some students, and it was quite interesting. And the young people didn't know it, and they're saying that they want us to be safe, but they're not giving us the tools for us to be safe. And what they expect us to do with that. And so it's really important for persons, young people, you're interested in supporting, understanding, knowing more, you can become a part of the youth advocacy movement. Okay,
so I guess you preempted my next question. How can people become volunteer for, let's say, the Grenada Planned Parenthood, even the YAM, which you just mentioned, the youth advocacy, right? So how can we become volunteers? Because most of these organizations are non-profit organizations, and so every area of help or aid is needed. So how can we become volunteers to your organization?
And you said it well, right? There's so many opportunities to volunteer, to support, and to be a part of the work, right? So the youth advocacy movement can be one, but we also have adult volunteering streams. So, for example, the board is a volunteer board, so you might want to be involved in the highest decision-making mechanism and want to volunteer for the board. So you look out for opportunities around that. We also oftentimes look for volunteers as it relates to, gender equality work, volunteer as it relates to clinical service and support. Oftentimes we have what we call internships for persons who are in the clinical profession or social work profession or public health career paths, and they can come and offer there's different kinds of services. So we oftentimes collect data, analyze data. It's a big part of what we do. And so that might be an area that you want to come and support. You like doing research, you can come in and be a part of that. From time to time, when we have outdoor engagements, we also look for what we refer to as community advocates and so on, who are able to, help, be gatekeepers for us, because we might be going into a community. You're already a part of that community, and it's so easy for you to be able to, share the message versus us going into a space that, we're unfamiliar with. And so community members might say, we want you to come into our community. And we start having that conversation around how we can partner with that community group or that organization so that we can offer services to their population. So as I said, there are many ways that we can engage persons who are interested in supporting and being a part of this work.
All right. So how then can businesses support your organization in this part of this work? As I mentioned, most of the persons are volunteers, and you just summed it up, saying how we can provide our service. How can the business community then give you more support? Because there is a cost to everything. Even if there's a reduction, as they put it, there's no free lunch. So how can the business communities help support?
Yeah, TPPPA, the range of services that we offer are ones that are very critical, right? It saves lives. And we have to remember and attach, the value to that. And so we often require corporate communities to what we call social partnering or social contracting, where, for example, you can say International Women's Day, we want to sponsor the campaign. And so it means that every woman that comes into the clinic, you're going to cover the cost of whatever services that they are accessing. And that way we can advertise the program as completely free. The project that we just concluded, it was Canada Fund for Local Initiative, and they made the services free to rural women. And we had the call, people are saying, but what about St. George's? What about, and so on. But we have to recognize that sometimes funding is restrictive. But the local community can say, well, we want this in for our workers. You can be a school and say, we want all our teachers to benefit from having their annual pap smears, and the men have the digital rectal exams as PSAs. And you can, as a for-profit organization, say, we're paying for all our workers to come and have this service. We schedule them and have them come in. And so you can do it for your own workers, or you can extend it beyond your workers for more vulnerable populations. And these are also streams or entry points for engagement around, being a part and supporting this very, very important work.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of talk about STEM nowadays. How can we as civil society lobby for women to enter those fields: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics?
Yeah. I mean, it starts, we can start from, early socialization and come to the education system and all the way back to macro systems like policies and government decisions and so on. And so if we start in the early interventions in terms of, you might be a civil society organization, you're working with children, a daycare, a preschool, and so on. How are you helping both boys and girls recognize that the gender roles that are, the traditional gender roles are pigeonholing them? And how can you create a space where both boys and girls it is very okay for them to explore the full range of themselves, and not limit them and say, oh, you can't do the construction because, you're a girl, or you can't be the engineering, you need to be a nurse, or you need to be, and creating those barriers, those boxes for baby boys and baby girls, right? Even as we go into higher education, secondary school and so on, it's so critical for, civil society organizations to advocate for the systems. I mean, simple things like, for example, the books. If you go back to primary school, the books, how they depict different careers and so on, women in the home and outside. And, it's reinforcing some of those gender inequalities. And we have to challenge them. And sometimes, I'm requesting that we be a part of policy and decision-making spaces, so that we can influence those decisions about what books the children are reading, especially if it is reinforcing negative norms and negative gender stereotyping. We want to be able to penetrate these different spaces, and so that we can influence. And so the advocacy is really about, when possible, building capacity of teachers, employees, and so on, so that we're creating an equitable space, so that when our girls and our boys, when they're going out into these fields, people are not saying, oh, you're not the right person for this because you're a boy or because you're a girl, but they're more open to the idea that a boy and a woman can be anything that they want to be, right? And that those fake ideas and notions that, women bring can take, too fragile, can't handle those computations and so on. We're able to dismantle all of those ideas and create a space where people are able to recognize, no, man, we have some intelligent women, mathematicians and scientists and so on. And we opening up the playing field for them and for others to, come on board.
Absolutely. I mean, you touch on so many things, but this calls for a broader conversation. Now, as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to add or share on this beautiful, momentous day, International Women's Day?
Yes. International Women's Day, for me, is a very special day, as I said, when we started. And it echoes for me, a time when we can celebrate women without the stereotypes. I always have a pet peeve for Mother's Day, because a lot of times people celebrate Mother's Day in this way that suggests that you have to be a martyr, a martyr. We honoring the martyr, the pain and the suffering, as if it's the hallmark of what it means to be a woman. And I want to change the dialogue around, a good woman, and not necessarily one who has to suffer, but a woman who is entering a space that recognizes her as a person, right? One who has rights, and a one who can self-determinate. And on International Women's Day, I want to say digital, allow our women and girls to excel in the STEM, create spaces where they can reach their full potential without any barriers.
Absolutely. And you summed it up very nicely. Shakey, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us today as women on International Women's Day. And I hope that that more of our communities can be more engaged and involved in civil activities. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. As I conclude about the topic, creating visibility for civil society organizations as we embrace equity for women, now I want us to imagine a gender equal world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. A world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive. A world where differences are valued and celebrated. I believe together we can forge women's equality, and collectively we can all embrace equity. Let us all celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness about discrimination and violence against women. Let us all take the action to drive gender parity. Happy International Women's Day to all girls and women all over the globe.